Great Britain have lane 1 in this first heat of the men's 8. And lane 1 on the shore side is furthest from the cameras. Nearest to us, France, then Canada, then New Zealand, and then Great Britain. They were having a few problems down there at the start because the breeze, which gets up here at Lake Casitas at 9:45 so punctually you could set your watch by it, has now sprung up, and it can be a little fickle. It's an offshore breeze down there at the start. When they get up about to the 500-meter mark, then it tends to be a wind coming off the lake where there is a big inlet. This is a very large lake, 100-mile shoreline, and once the wind starts to blow, can get very tricky. Britain on the far side there, New Zealand next to them, and Canada in the front of the shot. Curious background to this particular race here at Lake Casitas. Once the East Europeans had pulled out, there were only 6 crews entered, and that would have meant a straight final with no heats. And then Chile produced a crew who will row in a borrowed boat. And that meant that as a result of the repechage system, there would have to be 3 preliminary races to eliminate 1 crew before the final. And nobody's betting that that crew won't be Chile. Canada now setting the pace in lane 3. They've got a length advantage over France, with Britain and New Zealand tucked in between them. Those are the Canadians. Narrowly beat the Americans at Lucerne, with East Germany 3rd, Britain 4th, and France 6th, and that's not a bad pedigree. It's Canada first. It's Britain 1/3 of a length behind them in second. 8 shell is about 60 feet long, and at its widest point no more than a couple of feet. And Britain still holding that position there, about 1/3 of a length down. The winner of each heat today goes directly to the final. The others will have to compete in the repechage. The British 8 have been told to go all out to win the heat if they can, but not to do anything crazy if it looks out of reach. Everyone's assuming that Chile is here to save them from overexertion in the preliminary races. Britain going well on the far side there. New Zealand between them and Canada, and New Zealand feeling the pressure a bit. They're the current world champions, and they've lost only 1 member of the crew that took the title at Duisburg last September. But here they are behind Canada and Britain. France virtually out of it. Britain furthest of the 3 crews from the camera. Duncan McDougall at bow and Chris Mahoney at 2 were both in the 8 that took the silver medal in Moscow. And at 3 is Salih Hassan, Clive Roberts, Adam Clift, John Pritchard at 6. And then 2 more survivors from Moscow, Malcolm McGowan at 7 and Alan Whitwell at stroke. And now New Zealand coming back into it, and this is going to be a very good race. We've had 1 or 2 close finishes here in the women's quadruple sculls yesterday. The United States beat the Danes by 1/100th of a second. Nothing between those two. They are New Zealand and Canada. New Zealand have put on a lot of pressure and come through from 3rd to 1st. Canada 2nd, and Britain still there. There is nothing between these 3, and here is one of the finest sights in rowing. There were 2 H races at Lucerne, where Canada won the first with the Americans second, and the next day those placings were reversed. Britain took a 4th and a 3rd. British 8 being coxed by Colin Moynihan, Member of Parliament, whose duties in the House kept him back in Britain 10 days after the rest had come out here. And before he arrived, in training, the 8 were coxed by Pat Sweeney, former Thames tradesman, who's been living in the States for the last 5 or 6 years. But it's New Zealand setting the pace still. Canada second, Great Britain third. Just over 100 meters to go, and it looks as though Britain now will not do anything silly, except that the New Zealanders are going to take the direct route into the final, and Britain will accept the challenge of the repechage. The crew were not too disturbed about that. They were quite pleased when they knew that there were going to be heats. It's very tense to be here for a month and then sit around for 6 days of the regatta, knowing that you're going to have to produce it without a serious competitive outing previously in the final. So, New Zealand leading the way. They've got about a length over Canada, and about a length and a half further back, Great Britain. French about a length and a quarter behind Britain in fourth place. New Zealand, Canada, and Great Britain. No doubt where their hearts are, but I don't think we need be too depressed about the British performance.